This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Right On, showcasing the work of Otago Southland writers. I'm Beverly Martens. Join me for news and interviews with local writers on the second Wednesday of every month from noon till 1 and replay the following Sunday at 1 p.m. Right On is brought to you by the Otago Southland branch of the New Zealand Society of Authors and kindly supported by the great team at the University Bookshop.
What do you want to be when you grow up? They say you are what you read, and the University Bookshop can help you be whoever you want to be. Do you want to be an athlete? Then sit down with an inspiring sports biography. Do you fancy yourself as a detective? We have a grisly lineup of murder mysteries waiting just for you. Do you aspire to be the world's greatest chef? We have cookbooks to tantalise your taste buds. Do you want to celebrate your inner child? Play up in our fabulous children's room. The University Bookshop, helping you decide what you want to be when you grow up.
Welcome to Right On with me, Beverly Martens. Now this month it's all about writing for children. Oh, well, that's easier, right? Less words, more pictures. How hard can it be? Well, as you'll hear from my featured guest Samantha Montgomerie, it takes both discipline and drive to carve out any kind of commercial success in this highly specialised field. Samantha is this year's College of Education Children's Writer in Residence. And you'll remember last year, and back in July, I spoke with Fiona Tuakoi about her time here in Otipoti as the Children's Writers resident. And you can listen to that back as a podcast if you'd like, if you missed it the first time round. And that's on the OAR FM website, oar.org.nz. But what I won't be doing next year is talking to the 2026 Children's Writer in Residence. Why? Because there probably won't be one. The residency's funding has been cut, and in these tough economic and political times, this Children's Writer in Residency, along with others around the country, are under extreme financial pressure, and some of them will either disappear entirely or rely on crowdfunding to continue in any kind of modified form. So let's take time now to appreciate their importance and legacy while we can. And to this end, my first guest is Collections Specialist at Dunedin Public Library's Jackie McMillan. Jackie is passionate about the importance of children's literature, particularly the ongoing positive influence of past children's writers' fellows, and also goes the extra mile to create community groups who meet regularly here in Otipoti to enjoy and champion children's books and what they offer to the world. So here's Jackie. Now I'd like to welcome Jackie McMillan, who's the Collections Specialist at the Dunedin Public Libraries. Lovely to see you, Jackie. Tell us about what your job involves.
Yep, so mostly I'm ordering books for the library in a range of different areas, including children's non-fiction and large print and travel and history. So, most days I'll be at my computer looking online for new books and looking at suggestions that members of the public put through as well, and selecting the books and putting an order through and then waiting for the books to come.
Which is the exciting bit. So your specialty area, for want of a better phrase, so that's the way that most writers in Dunedin know you, is your passion for children's writing, children's books of all ages. Why are you so passionate about that? Where did that come from?
Well, one of the groups or events that I run is called Continued Sense of Wonder, and it is about that, capturing that sense of wonder. And I think children's books can do that a lot more readily, perhaps, than reading adult fiction. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons.
What are the others? I mean, did you just fall into reading as a child and lose yourself in it? And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even at school, primary school, volunteered in the school library. It was something my best friend and I used to read at each other's house and, swap stories, swap books. So,
Were there any series or sort of well-known names back then that really turned you on to reading?
Yeah, K.M. Payton was one, and Noel Streatfeild. And with my mum, she hadn't read the Anne of Green Gables books, and both she and I read them when I was about 11, 12, 13. We were right through all the books by her. Yeah, so those particular writers were, I don't know, there's something about them. They describe beautiful scenery, or I don't know. It's the action. It's the mix. It's sort of and historical novels, I suppose, too. So I kind of
So do you think being a librarian was always in your stars?
Yeah. When I was a child, I lived in Gore before we moved up to Dunedin, and I was apparently, according to my parents, the youngest member of the Gore Public Library. So there you go. So it goes way back.
Now, I wanted to talk to you today, Jackie, or in this month's show, because my other guest is the College of Education's children's writer-in-residence, Samantha Montgomerie, who we'll be talking to after this. And you wrote some excellent articles in the Libraries magazine recently, the magazine's called NB, just kind of talking through the lasting impact of those children's writers in residence that have coming here to Dunedin or from Dunedin, but having that 6-month stint to write freely with a stipend, which has been going on since 1992.
With running Continued Sense of Wonder, a lot of the writers have come along, children's writers that live locally, plus some of the writers, the fellows, over the last, 5 to 6 years. We've had usually the fellows like Ruth Paul, Fifi Colston, Fiona Tuakoi. So they all, have joined in and kind of met people through coming along to that. And so it's sort of like it's not just for writers by any means. It's the events about reading children's books, but so I've become more aware of the writers and the opportunity that they get. And recently I read The Memory Thief by Leonie Agnew, and that's actually, the setting is very much the Dunedin Botanic Gardens. So sort of. She was inspired by getting locked in the Botanic Gardens and trying to get out. And that sort of was the reason she wrote that story. And so obviously there's an influence of Dunedin in that story. But a number of these books have won in the different categories, and picture books and story.
Notable storylines.
They've won storylines things, but they've also won the New Zealand Book Awards. So, for instance, I've got in front of me David Elliott's Pigtails the Pirate, which won the Picture Book Award for that the year after it was published. And that's one that we read to our kids, and just absolutely you could read over and over again, and it's got a sort of atmospheric, and the art in it is beautiful, and the atmosphere, there's definitely Otago Harbour is there, and
it is in all his work, isn't it?
Yeah, and Aramoana Spit is in that story. So, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and he's one of the rare people that can write and illustrate his own books.
Yeah. And a number of, Ruth Paul's another one, and Fifi Colston, they're author-illustrators, and they all also illustrate for other people as well. It's quite interesting.
So there's something about the residency that kind of then adds to the overall canon, just like the Burns Fellow does for the canon of adult writing. I find that it's that opportunity and things.
And it's also quite neat, isn't it? Like here we are in Dunedin, and I know publishing is probably focused nowadays in Auckland or Wellington, but here we have a place that is influencing writers, and they're coming here and creating, in some cases more than one work in that time.
And just getting back to David's Pigtails.
The Pirate.
Pigtails the Pirate, is... I know you looked into that when you were doing the research for the articles. You looked into the sort of borrowing history of that, and it's quite phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah. Often picture books wear out, and that's very sad, and things go out of print very easily in New Zealand. But one copy of Pigtails the Pirate in the library has nearly done 300 issues, and some of those issues are to schools as well. So that's well over 300 families of kids that, for one copy of one book that has had, it's been well loved.
Well loved, very well loved, yeah. Careworn, as they call it when they wear out.
Yeah.
Right, excellent. Now, I want to circle back to what you were talking about with the community groups, because you're sort of reeling their names off like we know them. Can you just go through the community groups that you've organised at the library that are sort of regular and ongoing, and explain what they are and how people might be able to come along to them should they want to?
Right, yep. Well, Continued Sense of Wonder has now been running 10 years. And that was when I was fully buying, children's fiction. That I thought, and we've got a children's literature research collection, so I wanted to emphasise that those collections and have a group that, that the people that come to that are readers of those resources.
Just to be clear, though, they are adults, aren't they?
Adults,
so that's where the title springs from, doesn't it? That you have that continued sense of wonder into adulthood about the sort of imaginings and worlds of children's writing. Yeah.
So that's quarterly, 4 times a year, and different themes. So the next one is, for instance, on September the 17th, and the theme is slightly spooky. So ghost stories. Mm-hmm. And the next one after that is November 19th, and it's tearjerkers.
Oh.
Yeah. So it could be books that you've read as a child, or books that are new to you, or brand new books, So, and it's a great discussion, and there's often, people are picking up on reading that they'll see someone else present a book, and then they'll want to read that one themselves, or quite often you have two people bring the same book because they're thinking the same way, so about how they're going to do it. And the themes are just there to get everybody sort of thinking, but there's no way you have to stick to it. Like, if you don't like ghost stories, don't bring a ghost story, but please come along and enjoy. It's basically a book group, and we sit around in circle, and we have cups of tea and coffee and chocolate biscuits.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
You had me at chocolate.
Yeah.
So it's not a book group in the sense that, traditional book groups, you all read the same book and discuss it. No. This is people contributing and creating the discussion about what they bring along.
Yes,
is
that's
that right?
That's right. It's about, we take pretty much 5 minutes each to share our books or whatever. And, it could be one book or it could be 3 or 4 books, but you've got to squish it into 5 minutes.
And do you see people sort of swapping afterwards, or follow up after that? Yeah.
If I'm good, I write down the list and then share it with the people that have attended. But it depends how busy life is. So that sort of started my role doing sort of outreach type things. But in 2021, I had a role with the library, but paid for by the National Library, and it was called New Zealand Library Partnerships, and that was post-COVID, and about getting people to do reading for pleasure. And so from that, I was involved with getting Reading Aloud started, which has 2 readers come in, Lorraine Johnston and Dr. Paul Tankard, and they read aloud to an audience once a month. It's at 5:30. It's usually the second Wednesday of the month. And for instance, for that, the next one is the 13th of August. We've got Thumbelina. It's 150 years since Hans Christian Andersen passed away. I think it's on the 8th and of August. And then Anna Karenina. So not the whole of Anna Karenina, which is a rather large book. So that's just an excerpt. And so the 2 readers, they'll choose their excerpts.
And how long? They read for how long?
So they read... It goes from 5:30 to 6:30. There's a cup of tea in the middle, and that's sort of a community's been building around that. Around about 30 people will come in, and not always everyone the same each time. And if people are sitting in the library, they're welcome to join in as well. So we've had people just come along to it and become regulars at it because they've been just sitting in the library when it was on.
Experienced it.
So that's on the ground floor.
And what do you think that does for people? Is just the soothingness of hearing someone read something aloud? Because that's a big ask for Paul and Lorraine, isn't it? Because it's quite a it's a performance.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people shut their eyes and just listen. Others bring along their knitting, and sometimes it's quite hard after the cup of tea in the middle to get people to sort of concentrate and sit back down again. But I think it is that you enter the story, you're just sitting there listening, but also you're a group of people experiencing the story together. So if it's funny or if there's a sort of bit of suspense, you sort of hear an audible.
Lovely.
So so it's like audiobooks are very popular. There are we've got e-audio books as well at the library, and they're really, really popular. But the difference with this is it's sort of happening and you're part of it. Yeah.
And how do people find out about these events?
So it's on the library website under the events page, and there's posters up around the library, and listening to your radio show.
There is that.
So that's, and the only other, do you want to hear about the other group?
Yes, absolutely. I just thought those are the more public accessible ones, aren't they? I think the other one is kind of for a different reason, I think. But please.
No, it is. But they're at 3 of the different libraries. We've got Mosgiel, Waikouaiti and City Library at the moment, and maybe South Dunedin when that gets opened. We run dementia-friendly or shared reading groups where we're looking at a passage together, and the emphasis isn't really on the reading. The emphasis is using the reading to kind of link to memory and and also be like a social place that, if you're feeling like the stigma around dementia or that you're forgetting or forgetful, it doesn't matter. And we just do this together, and it's, again, cup of tea and biscuits. And that's sponsored by Paulson Higgs. So, and we do that group in association with Alzheimer's Otago. So a lot of people will come to us because they've been referred to us, but you don't have to have a referral, and you don't actually have to have memory loss, but that you're kind of sympathetic to people that have.
And
it's a struggle.
Yeah, and some carers would come along too,
that's right,
clearly. Yeah. So this is the one that's at all 4 or 5 libraries, but the other groups are only in the Central Library, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. And the narratives is what it's called. And it's Book Spark Chat. That's once a week at the moment in those 3 libraries.
And where would you look up when it is on and where it's on?
That again is on the events page of the library, and this poster's up. It's a beautiful picture of a book that's, it's a flower, but it's made out of a book, and it's a beautiful art by our talented artist Jill Bowie, and it was such a beautiful thing, and I was like, this is, it's the print, but it's not quite how you read it, and I thought, that's kind of almost an sort of how things are with dementia.
And what makes you, you've got a busy job, what makes you want to kind of do these extra things and what got you started on all of that?
Well, I think what started for me was taking responsibility for the children's literature research collection, which isn't very well known about. And that is a resource for parents or teachers or librarians or anybody who's interested in children's books. The most popular thing in that book, in that collection, is about Tintin's, the author of Tintin, Hergé. There's things in there that people kind of come looking for, but it's sort of in the children's section, but it's right next to the children's non-fiction, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. And that's a wonderful collection that probably started with I'm having a mental blank. Dorothy Neal White, and she was sort of like a specialist. She got trained in the States, and she came back to Dunedin, and she was the first professional children's librarian in the country, and so she sort of had some responsibility for training other librarians as well, and she started the collections in some of the state high schools, some of the book collections there. So she had a remarkable outreach. She would do radio shows promoting books and reviewing them for children. So that collection is just incredible, what's in there. And I wanted people to know about it. So when we do this group, I often show people, there's a book on this author or this author or illustrator.
Right, because I think the sort of the profile goes to the Read Gallery, doesn't it, in a way, for the adult collections and historical things and things like that up on the third floor. But I didn't know that there was a sort of a children's specialist kind of thing as well.
So it's got the name Children's Literature and Research. I mean, research, your own research. People research on Google, don't they? I mean, so don't be put off by the word research. It's not academic stuff. There's a mixture of things in there. A lot of the resources are English or American, given the long history with children's books. But there's a lot of Australian, New Zealand stuff there too.
And being added to with the, writer in residence thing, isn't it? That's adding to the canon of New Zealand children's writing for children.
Yeah, that's books about the books.
Right.
Yeah. So they're
contextual things.
Yeah, and they'll be looking at children's literature as a whole or looking at a specific aspect of it. Yeah. So in New Zealand, there's not a lot of books being written about New Zealand children's literature, and the couple of the ones I can think of and there's a few things written on Margaret Mahy. There's things that look at power of place, like that sort of thing. But there's fantastic stuff there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Jackie. We love what you do and we want you to keep doing it, and we thank you very much for the writers, as writers and on, the Society of Authors and things. I mean, you feel like a resource to me. If I ever wanted to know anything in that thing, I'd just be, talking to you, and, you're at lots of events, you have a good profile and these groups and things. So really, Yeah,
2019, I think we hosted in Dunedin a children's writers and illustrators hui. So that's sort of the people that had been coming to the group had helped facilitate that, all worked for free, basically doing that. So, and people like Trish Brooking, who were at the College of Ed, was involved in that as well. So,
right. So you're creating, you're doing these groups, but you're creating your own volunteer base for when you've got your next big thing in the pipeline.
Let's hope. I mean, that was a hard ask with very little money, but it would be lovely to do something like that again for the country.
Right.
People like coming to Dunedin.
Is there anything in the pipeline that's...
at this stage, no.
No, so it's monthly or weekly groups that you do and keep everybody connected and interested in children's literature.
Work. This was outside of work.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jackie. I've been speaking to Jackie McMillan, who's the collection specialist at Dunedin Public Libraries, and if you want to know more, please look up their website, particularly on the events page. Thanks, Jackie. You're listening to Right On with Beverly Martens, and thanks again to Jackie McMillan for supplying such excellent context to the health and wealth of children's literature here in Dunedin. Now, as promised, let's hear from Samantha Montgomerie, my feature guest. Samantha Montgomerie is a prolific writer of children's books with a first class BA in English, who did her secondary teacher training up in the Waikato and now lives with her family here on the Otago Peninsula. And she is this year's University of Otago College of Education Children's Writer in Residence. Welcome, Samantha. You're just finishing up your residency now, aren't you? How's that been?
Yes, kia ora, Bev. First of all, thank you for inviting me along. It is a good moment to come at the end of my residency and reflecting back on what a marvellous experience it's been. The gift of time has been something that I think is really unique and may not come again in my writing life. And that's probably been the most precious point reflecting back on this. And I'm sure as our interview goes on, I'll be able to inform you a little bit of what I've been able to do in that time.
It's all a big blur at the moment, isn't it? Yes. Okay, well, let's look ahead first before we look back. I know you're not returning to teaching, you're normally a secondary school English teacher, till the end of this year. So you're giving yourself almost some more time. Can you at least now talk about what the rest of the year looks like for you?
Yeah, sure. So actually probably the biggest achievement in the residency has been able to complete the first draft of this wonderful middle grade novel that I pitched to get the residency. It focuses around a young protagonist, a girl who's only 12, who has to move to the Marlborough Sounds and reconnect with her grandparents there. She's reluctant to go. She's left her vibrant social life with her peers in the UK behind. And while she's there, she encounters an orphaned Hector's dolphin and then learns the plight of what is happening for that lovely endemic taonga that we have here, and becomes an advocate for change to protect them. So it's, for me, my usual writing life is peppered in amongst teaching. And the last middle grade novel manuscript that I wrote took me almost 5 years to write, in between the other regular writing work that I have. So I was able to finish that first draft on the residency in 6 months, and the rest of the year, to get back to your question, will actually be putting that away for a month, which I think is always great practice for writing, and then dusting it off and reshaping and editing and crafting, with the vision that hopefully by the end of the year I'll have a manuscript that's ready to go out to publishers.
Right. Have you got a publisher in mind? Do they know it's coming?
There's quite a few that know it's coming. So usually I'm not actually connected with a New Zealand publisher so that they've commissioned me to write it or that, but there's a few that have expressed interest in wanting to read that first draft, so that's exciting.
Fantastic. What a nice to have an uninterrupted flow of one project.
It really is. And actually one of the beauties in that too has been, I think, having to write under, as a secondary thing next to teaching, I always felt very pressured with time. And it was really hard getting into the creative zone of my writing often. You give a lot as an English teacher. There's a lot you're giving all the time in your practice to your students, and often I do come home mentally fatigued from that. So then having to scrape that off and try and focus on my own creative work is often quite exhausting. So in this lovely stretch of 6 months where the main focus has been the work, it's been really lovely to be able to experiment with how I work creatively as well. And looking back, that's been really, really valuable to my practice as a writer also.
What have you found and noticed about your creative practice in the time where you've probably been more aware of it?
Yeah, well, one is actually probably giving myself. The gift of time has allowed me to explore creatively, to be bold. I think I'm such a planner, my personality, and I think a lot of teachers are, where, we block out our years and plan everything, to the nth degree. And I think the first novel I tried to write, I actually did write. I approached it in that way. I read lots of books about structures of novels and blocked it all out and kind of steadily went through all the beats. But for this one, it was really nice. What I learnt is that I'm really capable of picking up a thread early on and exploring that, writing it. And even if it's a scene that has to go later, that experience of toying with the idea, there's a gem in there that you might then be able to apply to another scene or another part of the book that's going to stay. So trusting my own creative intuition, I think, about what might work or what thread you want to kind of pull and see where it leads.
So that's almost motifs and themes without you even realising it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I always love that in my reading practice, looking for those themes and those motifs. And like I say, I think in the past I've probably, thought about that beforehand and tried to weave it in, but this time it's lovely to see that unfolding organically, and seeing what can come from that as well.
Excellent. Now, I read a slew of your books before today, and some of them are quite short, so it certainly wasn't onerous, but there's lots of educational early reader phonics books for like Wendy Pye Publishing. I think something like 50, is that right?
Yep,
I mean, just incredible.
Right, yeah.
And also several, and I'm saying several, I think there's about 30 for the Ministry of Education. And like, how did you get those contracts? How did that come about?
Yeah, so actually my writing journey publicly, I've always been a writer, I think, in my life. I've written, when my nephews and nieces were growing up, I used to write them children's picture books using their photos and their teddies and things like that as the characters. But in terms of putting my work out into the world, it did start with writing some poetry first of all, but then also when my son was born, I rediscovered that joy of the picture book again. And again, I was still part-time teaching for some of that journey. So it was thinking that, this is a shorter form of writing that actually I really love the, picture books and readers. So starting to write some of those and experiment. And then I actually just, I had a look to see who were those publishers in New Zealand, and was really lucky to stumble across a great editor at Sunshine Book who picked me up and chose to publish one of those early pieces that I pushed out, and through that connected with, there's a big group of writers here. There's another four for who work for Sunshine and have for about 30 years. And so the company connected me with them, and then my journey just, kind of became really enriched with them on board as well. So, and I do also, the Ministry of Education came about by, I think I was lucky, like being in teaching circles, I knew about that new structured literacy that was coming out. And so I approached them early on. I found out who had that contract, and through the University of Canterbury, and actually contacted them. So that was a really lovely project to be involved in. I also do a lot of work for HarperCollins in the UK, so they've been a really big publisher, and I really think they're the ones who trained me in how to write phonics. So through writing with them, I just was given their schemes, read a lot of their books, and kind of learnt that art of writing decodables, as they're often called, or structured literacy books. And again, I think that was just good luck, just happening to email the right editor at the right time. Yeah.
Now, the ones I particularly loved in that big pile were Swallowing the Sun, which was a lovely children's poetry book about the seasons and the elements, and then the added rap song that was in Mr. Gruffy. I thought that was just a lovely little bonus. Also, something I noticed about the illustrations now is that they're obviously quite international, but there's also, I sort of laughed, but I mean, it's the modern world. There were pictures of parents taking photos on their phones of their children's achievements, which you can see in any school performance any day of the week. Yes. And that just sort of made me laugh. And I just wondered about, I mean, you've worked with many, many illustrators. How does that relationship work? Talk us through the sort of to and fro of it.
So it's that's one of the joys actually of being a children's writer, I think, is the way that an illustrator can actually see things in your work and bring different elements to the fore. So, and actually I've had the experience of being absolutely delighted with all books I've had published. So I've been really lucky. So we don't get any say in who our illustrator is. So for the companies I work with, we send the written book off. They make the match with an illustrator. We get sent pencil sketch proofs of the work, and often then I still won't know, especially for the UK where there's a huge pool of illustrators that they use. The work will often come to me and I still don't know the name of the illustrator. So, but at that point, I get to say whether the characters are how I envision them, whether they've depicted the right things in the scenes, and once that's approved, it goes back to them and they do their colour work. So and then there'd be another two or froings before the finished product is published.
So there's someone in the middle sort of brokering that, you're giving their feedback, not directly to the illustrator.
That's right. So the editor that picks up your book that you're writing, they're the go-between. And I guess there's reasons for that, so that, a testy author doesn't, approach an illustrator themselves. And of course, the publishing companies are out to make money. They have their own vision for the book and what it's going to look like. So they're that in-between person, I think, who have all that knowledge about what sells well and what people might be looking for. And
so they're sort of protecting the creative egos.
And the quality of the book.
And also seeing it in context of a series and things like that, I would imagine.
I will just add, though, I've had a lovely thing. Often when I've found out who the illustrators are, I've been able to contact some, and it's really lovely. Like, people who've illustrated my books live all around the world, so Scotland, Spain, Argentina, and it's just been making that connection personally. And again, the companies don't often give me their details, but I've managed to find them online and message them on Instagram and had this lovely relationship with them post-publishing as well. So that's been a really lovely extension of my creative community that I've really enjoyed.
And fulfilling for both parties, I should think.
Yeah.
Now, another one of the books that really struck me was for older child readers, which is Ada. It's a chapter book, Ada Lovelace, the Pioneer of Computing, and that was for Hachette UK. Now, obviously, you did a huge amount of research for that, and obviously, there's that sort of Ada Lovelace. She's Lord Byron's daughter, and that's about all we know. You went much further than that and gave her a context for her life. How did you do the research? What did you leave in? What did you leave out? How challenging was that to then distill it down to?
Yes, good question. So I am a huge fan of Ada Lovelace's, and that's, I think, one of the books I've just loved to write so much so far in my journey for that reason. So I came in knowing a lot about her anyway. And actually, I'd read a lot of the children's picture books and junior fiction books that have been written about her as well. So I saw the way that other writers had approached that big life in their own writing. But for me, I really wanted to, and I knew Hashay, when I pitched the idea to them, picked up on this as well, that yes, we wanted that life story. And for me, of course, the big drive there is there in a lot of the books I've gone on to write, actually, that are a little longer, is always about that woman who's overcome huge obstacles in history to achieve something, really incredible. But the company were also, of course, really keen to bring in the inquisitive mind that a child might have about how we ended up with the modern day computer. So that was something that, I really developed in the story that I think isn't there for a lot of the other books about Ada Lovelace. So what happened with her work? How was it that Alan Turing stumbled upon that? I did have to, luckily I've got a husband who's very tech savvy and a son, and so they helped me. I got in a little bit of a tangle trying to explain algorithms, and there were lots of discussions at our family table about whether I'd got it right, and so they were great proofreaders at that level also, because I'm not strong in computers myself, as anyone who knows me will know. So lots of research. I read just about everything, I think, that had been written in the children's market on her, but then also lots of deep research myself online. And I read a couple of biographies about her, so I really enjoyed that process. Yeah, and there was so much, of course, that didn't go into the book as well.
What I loved about it, though, was that you could follow the thread through from, the 1880s through to almost modern day, so that context, but also the distilling down. And I think perhaps your work as a poet helped you in that of just getting to the nub of things, but still moving it along.
Yes,
yeah.
And actually that's a really lovely thing to pick up on. And I think when I mentioned at the start that I started writing with poetry, pushing that out in the world, I think the love for the picture book made me realise they're quite similar. Like, you only have so many words to play with. You want to get the idea across to the child, but it's got to be very condensed. But at the same time, there can be lines in there that are laced with poetic qualities. And
internal rhymes that you don't.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and metaphors and similes, and So I really love that about writing for children. Yeah.
Now, I think that's a really nice segue into exploding an urban myth, which is that, and I want to hear your full and frank response to this, Samantha, that the perception is that, children's writing for children is something slightly lesser, it's easier, in inverted commas. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I disagree strongly to that, of course. And I think, I'm lucky. I'm aware of how lucky I am to work with children as well. And I'm a huge advocate for reading in my classroom and build a big reading culture in the schools that I'm in. And hearing young voices talking about books and what works and what doesn't, I think adult readers are so much more patient. I think we'll pick up a book, and if it's not working, we'll go, I'll read up to page 100, some people say, or some will say, I'll read a quarter of the book before I decide. A child's not going to do that. If we haven't hooked them in and engaged them in those first few pages, they won't, persist. And particularly, those lower level books that I write for very beginner readers, but also emergent independent readers. So the emerging chapter book books. Reading's hard. It's a journey for them, and so if it's difficult from the onset, the story has to hook them, or they're not going to want to persevere. So that's the first thing I think that explodes that myth away, is that it's actually so much harder to get a buy-in from a child who's learning to read. In that way, but even for novels, for more independent readers, I think the same thing applies. They're clever kids, and they know when they're reading something that's of quality and really, really good. So we have to work really, really hard to make sure we're producing the best literature for them in that way. I also think, as I mentioned before, I think really rich language helps hook a young reader in, helping them to build that imaginative world, which is, so abstract that we've got to make that writing really great as well. Writing phonics and beginning reader books is actually really complex, especially for the phonics decodable books. We have literally sounds that, how it works is they're all structured on a very strict level. So there's only certain sounds you can use in each book. So we have to spend a long time at the start building word banks. I wrote a whole book about a dog sledding in the Arctic Circle, but I couldn't use the word snow or ice because those words weren't decodable. And so, people look at that and go, oh, that would be so easy. It's only 100 words or whatever. But to be able to write a story with an engaging plot, incredible characters, you have to do that with a limited bulk of words. It's a real art. It's a little bit like I get the same feeling at the end of it after finishing like a cryptic crossword. Feels like, like that satisfaction that you've done it. And so for me, it's that same journey.
Cracking the code.
Cracking the code, yeah.
Now, can you decode the word decodables? Because that's not a word that I knew before I started looking at your books. What does that mean?
The two terms, phonics is, of course, the sound of the certain sounds, and they're put into a level of reading, and certain sounds get introduced as you go through that reading progression. So decodable, when we say something's decodable, it's where a student can read a word and then, ascertain the meaning of that word in their reading. But it's in New Zealand, we've started to use the term decodables to actually mean that structured literacy program like phonics as well. So they've become interchangeable here.
Okay, now any tips? You're often working to tight deadlines.
Yes.
I think you told me sometimes you may have to turn a book around in a couple of weeks, which seems, incredible to me. What are your tips and tricks for getting stuff finished? How do you work to such tight deadlines?
Well, deadlines work for me. I find them incredibly motivating because I've got that, that type A personality that likes everything really structured out. So, for shorter projects, it is just a matter of slotting in the hours, like finding the gaps, and being able to do that. But I do approach it like normally, if it's a shorter piece, it will be, well, I know I have to have this draft done by this day because I want so many days in between to step away from it and then to go back. But for something like the novel that I've been writing on this residency, and actually I have actually written another junior fiction book, then that is actually what I find works for me is having a word limit, being able to say, so on the residency I've said to myself that I have to do 1,500 words a day at least. And I have to play all these tricks with myself to make sure I do it. So like hiding away my cell phone, putting a timer on my computer, I've found it to be really productive, where I write for, it's called the Pomodoro technique, where you set it for 25 minutes and or you don't do anything else. Like you don't look up your research, you don't check your email, you just write. And even if it's bad writing, you just keep writing, you keep your fingers on the keys. And that has been so productive for me. And then once you've done that and you've got your messy 1,500 words down, then you can decide what you do, whether you go back and look at it and edit it and craft it or write more so that's I found that really great for keeping my first draft moving along at quite a pace. Very different to if I edit in a very different way where I don't put any time constraint on it. That takes a lot more time, and
I think there's a lot of thinking between the editing. You might do something and then you'll be doing something else, and you'll be making dinner and you think,
that's right. But actually it's those moments that are great, and even in the writing process I find some of the best ideas, and if I'm crafting or reshaping a piece of work, they often come when you're away from the desk or away from the work. And I've for years now I've listened to podcasts of writers and interviews like this, where people talk about their processes and realise that it seems to be a very common thing. For me, walking my dog, I always think of material or go back to that work that I'm working on and think of a line. I always have a notebook on me or my phone now. I've got really good at using voice memos while I'm driving the car, because those little sharp moments often come when it's all just there in your subconscious, and then it comes very clear in a moment when you're not thinking about
But
the
if you
work.
don't capture it, it can go just as quickly.
Absolutely, yeah, which is a very frustrating experience. I do also block things out on a calendar, so I'll often have 4 deadlines or 4 bits of work all at once, and so I find blocking it on a calendar and then thinking, when I'm going to approach the different stages of each piece helps as well. Yeah.
Now let's talk about where you live, which is on the lovely Otago Peninsula, because I believe that's quite and I've seen it in some of your work already, a huge influence on you. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, it is. As a child growing up, I remember when I was in high school and, discovering my love of English studies, it was during that time period where people started talking about our cinema of unease and I think New Zealand literature had been around for so long that people were reflecting back on common motifs, and there was a lot of talk about the landscape, our brooding landscape, and I could, of course, see it in what I was reading, and it's been interesting to see that for me, that blueprint does come up in my writing as well. So I grew up in Wanganui, and they have a big river that runs through the city there, and I've been intrigued that appears in my work a lot, like connections with water. But I've also been living in Dunedin for 25 years now, and on the Otago Peninsula for 15 years of that. And you're right, the mountainous landscape, that big sky that we get there, the links to the harbour, an attachment to our marine life, all of that is just what keeps resurfacing in my work.
Along with environmental issues too, because you're kind of living in amongst that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely become a part of me. Yeah, for sure.
Now, you juggle lots of hats, as we alluded to some of them earlier: teacher, writer, mother, poet, and also competition judge. That's something that you've kind of stepped into that space now. Do you want to tell us about the National Poetry Day competition that's coming up?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I just decided, I love being a teacher. I just love seeing young writers exploring with language and being creative. So, it's always been a formative part of my English teaching practice. And I know not all writers want to put their writing out into the world, but those that do, seeing that joy they get too when they're either at an event with other young people who write or have their work published or accepted and placed in a competition, it can be very fulfilling for them. So as part of a payback to the community for my residency, I thought, wouldn't it be great to launch a Ōtepoti writing competition for school students, and one that wasn't attached to schools, so I know there's a very competitive thing around schools, unfortunately. And so it would be really nice just suspending all of that and saying, young people, let's get writing, let's see what you can do, and having an event that's not school focused, but actually just for young people. I thought we'd get maybe 30 or 40 entries, but I've been overwhelmed that we've had close to 100. Yeah, I think we're 95 or 96 entries. Just so pleased and getting lovely feedback from especially the primary school communities about the opportunity to have the competition and the buy-in that they've had from their students. So, yeah, it's been a real joy. I'm looking forward to National Poetry Day and being able to see them all come along.
And that, folks, is on the 22nd of August.
Yes.
So coming up later in the month. Look, I've loved talking to you, Samantha, and anyone who wants to know more, and I'm sure we all do, because it just felt like we'd scratched the surface there, can go to Samantha's website, which is
SamanthaMontgomerie.com.
Yes, and that's Montgomerie ends in R-I-E,
right.
Not a Y.
Yeah.
Right, so let's finally wrap up and go out on the song that I asked you to choose. I love having my guests choose their sort of favourite Kiwi song. So tell us what you've chosen, why you've chosen it, what it means to you.
Yeah, so it took me a long time to decide, but I chose Bikranga's Gravity. And the reason I chose that is I remember I think I was in my 20s when Bikranga first released Sway. And, and I just remember thinking, to me, she's the epitome of a strong New Zealand female artist, but her music really did sound different. And particularly this song, I love it for its poetic qualities. It is poetry set to music with that very distinctive, unique Bikranga musical style as well. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm sure we all will, and I'll just play that in a second after I thank this month's guests, who are Jackie McMillan and from the Dunedin Library, and Samantha Montgomerie, who is this year's Children's Writer in Residence from the College of Education. Thanks very much for listening, and thanks to our sponsors UBS and Ka Kite.
If grab
Write On, showcasing the work of Otago Southland writers. I'm Beverly Martens. Join me for news and interviews with local writers on the second Wednesday of every month from noon till 1 and replayed the following Sunday at 1 p.m. Write On is brought to you by the Otago Southland branch of the New Zealand Society of Authors and kindly supported by the great team at the University Bookshop.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.